Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and welcome to a Christmas edition of the macOS Sonoma 14.2.1 update video. We're going to talk about why Apple released this update, is it important for you to install, and why did they release it right before the Christmas holiday. Plus, we're going to talk about the OpenCore Legacy Patcher for unsupported Macs. We now have 6 different demonstration Macs from 2017 all the way back to 2010 now, and of course we're going to have our demo unit for supported Mac, our 2020 machine. We're going to go through a full walkthrough demo. You're going to want to stick around for this one. Let's jump in and get started. First of all, sorry for the delay in coming out with this update video. I know a lot of you do wait and watch this video to see if it's okay to install macOS Sonoma either on your supported Mac or your unsupported Mac, but a lot of things came up before the holidays and I wasn't able to get it finished on time, and hopefully we'll get them out quicker in the new year. But now that we're ready to go, let's talk about the 14.2.1 update. First of all, let's look at the full slate of updates that were released by Apple on December 19th. On the macOS side, we only got macOS Sonoma 14.2.1. On macOS Ventura, it is the same current 13.6.3, and Monterey is also current on 12.7.2. But Apple did release Safari 17.2.1 as a separate update. So check your software update and you will see a Safari standalone update for Ventura and Monterey. There's the same Xcode and the command line tools stand at 15.1. Now let's look at the iOS side. We got iOS 17.2.1 for iPhone XS and later, and for all devices that cannot install iOS 17, we got 16.7.4 and iPadOS 16.7.4. But for iPadOS, it still remains on 17.2. AudioOS for HomePod, tvOS, and watchOS did not get a associated update. Our demonstration Mac here today is our good old trusty MacBook Pro 13-inch M1 2020. To get to the software update, all you need to do is open up System Settings and then go to Software Update, and you should see the 14.2.1 update here. If you want to find more info, you click on this button here, and you can see right here all the information. Now, this is coming from 14.2, so it's going to be one of the smallest update sizes available, 1.04 gigabytes. If you're coming from 14.1 or 14.0, it's going to be larger because it includes all the fixes from the previous releases. Now, if you're on an unsupported Mac, here's our 2010 MacBook, and you can see it's 13 gigabytes in size. And again, that's normal for unsupported Macs. So we'll click on Update now, and we'll make sure that the update is the same size after entering our password, because sometimes it's in the past it's been different sizes. We'll see if it's on target here. Right on target, 1.04. We're going to document how long this takes to prepare the update, install the update, and we'll be right back after it restarts. Okay, we're back up after the update. What is the build version of 14.2.1? It is 23C71. There was no beta version of 14.2.1, so you don't have to worry about any other version. How long did it take to install the 14.2.1 update? Well, we have a new record, 6 minutes total. Preparation time, 3 minutes. Install time after reboot, 3 minutes. This is the fastest Sonoma update yet, and it was one of the smallest updates, so that makes sense for the time it took to install. If we go back to some of the smaller security updates, we see 8 minutes and 7 minutes, so there we go. Now let's see if Apple updated the system firmware on M1, the OS loader, or the BridgeOS version on Intel T2 Macs. You can go find that information by going to Apple about this Mac and then scroll down to System Information, and you'll see all this under the hardware overview. And we track that because Apple does not share very much information about their updates. Find out as much information as we can about what they did in these updates. So for the Apple Silicon firmware updates, Apple did not update the firmware. As we can see here, it is the same as 14.2, and they usually do not on small security point release updates. Now the OS loader iBoot is also the same, and for T2 BridgeOS and Intel, that is also the same, 2116-2057. Now, if you want to create a USB installer, Apple did release a full installer of 14.2.1, and I've got this in my Install Assistant package database, and they also released a full IPSW Restore file for Apple Silicon for 14.2.1. Apple also updated Safari to 17.2.1 for Ventura and macOS Monterey, and it's the same version for Sonoma, but it's built in. If you have to reinstall Safari, you can go to my database here because it has Ventura and Monterey package downloads for you to be able to install and reinstall. Now, to the root of the video. What is new in the 14.2.1 update? I wish I had more information, but all we have here is that this update provides important bug fixes and security updates and is recommended for all users. If you're a watcher of this channel, you know that this upsets me because Apple really needs to let users know what is being changed, so they should be informed of whether they should install this update or not. When you just are generic, like just bug fixes and security, why would I even install it? What's important? Why would I even waste the time to, or even possibly cause problems if I install this update if it's not even that big of a deal? Well, that's what I try to do. I try to knock down and figure out what the actual changes are in these updates. If we go to the security release pages, we can get a little bit more information. We can first of all see that the iOS and the iOS 17.2.1, the iOS 16.7.4, and iPadOS do not have any published CVE entries in there. So there's no security on these. So when you go to the update page though, we see that we get the same for 17.2.1. But if we go to the iOS 16 update page, this fixes an issue where built-in apps that have been deleted may not reinstall. At least there's something there to tell users whether they should install this update if they're having that issue. But when we go back to the macOS Sonoma updates, we've got nothing to go by. If we go back to the security update page under Sonoma, we do have something to look at. So when we click on this, we can see that there is just one CVE, and it's for Windows Server, available for macOS Sonoma. A user who shares their screen may unintentionally share the incorrect content. Description: a session rendering issue was addressed with improved session tracking. So what could that be, and why is that so important for this update to be pushed out right before Christmas? So when we look who the submitter of this CVE is Craig Hockenberry. And in this situation, we can go right to the source. So if we go to Craig Hockenberry's Mastodon account, he talks about this right here. Pro tip: don't use screen sharing in macOS Sonoma 14.2. It shares random windows in other spaces with whoever is on the other end of the line. If you think your desktop is completely empty, it isn't. As you can see below, this could range from embarrassment to leaking private data. So what he's saying is that if you're sharing with an application like Zoom, WebEx, or you're streaming with OBS, when you share a window that is your main desktop, let's say you have another monitor going here, you could be sharing your spaces or your mission control spaces. So let's take a closer look at that. I was able to reproduce that. This is a demo that I set up where I was able to reproduce the issue, and I have this Mac Pro 2013 set up here with the main desktop. And on the second monitor here, I have OBS running like I'm setting up to stream the main desktop. So if I were to stream this window, I should see my terminal, the desktop background, my dock, and this OpenCore Legacy Patcher open window. But if you look at the streaming window here, I have my main monitor, the left-hand monitor, set here as my main streaming so I can control the whole system. But look what's showing. I can see the OpenCore Legacy Patcher window, but I don't see the desktop, and I see a Safari window. But if you look over here, I'm using spaces, and I have my Safari window in the space, but you can't see on the screen. So that's what the bug is, or the security vulnerability, if you could say that, because it could show wherever you're streaming or doing a meeting, your Safari window or any application that you have up here in your spaces or your mission control spaces. Now it's understandable why Apple pushed this out so fast, because anybody could accidentally be, and it's not like they're not paying attention. If you have any of these spaces open here and you just share this window, you could be sharing these spaces, and it could be confidential information if you're working for a company, or personal information like your bank account. That's a pretty serious situation. So that's what this update was for, to fix this vulnerability. And I'm glad that I was able to see for myself how serious this vulnerability is if you're using streaming or a WebEx or any kind of conferencing software. All right, we can take a look at some of the Geekbench 6 benchmark scores. On 14.2, we had a 2389 and a multi-8713. And on 14.2.1, we had a 2401 and an 8764, so right on target. Okay, now let's talk about OpenCore Legacy Patcher and the 14.2.1 update. The current version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher as of December 25th, Christmas Day, is 1.3.0. Everything looks to be okay. There was a couple things I wanted to discuss though. First of all, there was an issue with the KDK downloaded. I'll show you a little bit of that later with a versioning that it was downloading. And also I have an update on the macOS recovery that is still broken as of 1.3.0. The good news is that the next version of OpenCore has fixed this. So we're at 0.96 OpenCore version, and I'll show you that here. So I click on settings, and then we can click on app, and then we can scroll down to the information on the release version of booted OpenCore 0.96. 0.97 fixes the recovery issue where no machines right now can boot into recovery. So the next version, OpenCore Legacy Patcher, maybe 1.3.1, should fix this. I've already seen reports of multiple people who have tested the 0.97 and recovery is working, so that's really good news. Now let's go over some of our 6 demo machines that we are testing for OpenCore Legacy Patcher 1.3.0 and Sonoma 14.2.1. The first one is the newest one, the 15-inch mid-2017 MacBook Pro, and this is important because it's got the touch bar, it's got the T1 security chip, and it has Touch ID to make sure all these things work. Let's first test Touch ID. We can hit the power button to lock the screen, and then we'll use Touch ID to unlock it. And there it is. That works great. And what I'm doing is I'm using switch control to be able to show the touch bar. Let's take a closer look at that. We'll move this into view. I can show the touch bar by using switch control to be able to show the touch bar and actually manipulate and use the touch bar down here so you can see that that's working okay. If your touch bar is not working, that's because you need to install macOS Ventura or lower, because embedded OS is no longer included in macOS Sonoma anymore. So that will install the touch bar, get it working again, and then you either can power it up from an external drive, you can install it on a secondary partition, and that'll get the touch bar working again. And you can get to switch control going to system settings, accessibility, and switch control, so you can test that out if you would like. But everything's working great on this 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro. Next up on the list is our mid-2014 15-inch MacBook Pro, and this is a Kepler-based NVIDIA GPU that does not require the kernel debug kit, so it's an interesting test to see if everything works okay. We are on 14.2.1 with 1.3.0, and there was no issues that came up on this update. It installed really well, and there's no problems with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, sound. Everything is working great. Next up on the list is a late 2012 Mac Mini. Now this is another interesting test because it has a Intel-based GPU and it does not require the kernel debug kit when we're doing the installation. We are on 1.3.0, 14.2.1 installed great, and we have our Wi-Fi, we've got our Bluetooth sound, everything is working great on this Mac Mini for the update. Next up on the list is what I like to call the Fatbook Pro, the 17-inch late 2011 MacBook Pro. We are running 14.2.1 update and 1.3.0. Everything went a-okay with the installation of this update. We have our Bluetooth, we've got our Wi-Fi, we've got our sound, everything's working great. Now keep in mind, this is the one I was having problems with Bluetooth before. If for some reason after all the root patches are installed and you do not see the Bluetooth or it's crossed out or something, one thing you can do to get it to fix up is resetting the PRAM. So reboot, hold down Command Option PR, let the chime twice, then let it boot back up, and a lot of times the Bluetooth will be working again and you should be a-okay. So we're looking good on this 17-inch 2011 MacBook Pro. Now, in an attempt to cover as many models as possible, going all the way back to 2010, that's why I added this 13-inch polycarbonate unibody MacBook. And this is the oldest machine we have in the testing fleet now, and I thought it would be good to add this because there's still people using 2008 to 2010 Macs on Sonoma. But this is where you're getting into a situation where you might be struggling based on your configuration, memory, or CPU. For example, like the Core 2 Duo might be struggling in certain situations, but that's why I wanted to bring the 2010 into the fold to kind of test how things work. And I found out a couple things about this machine for sure, because it did struggle a little bit. And I wanted to show you a couple tips when we do this. If you can see, one of the things that we see right away is that the menu bar is showing in white. So when you're using the Sonoma Valley wallpaper, if you open up OpenCore Legacy Patcher, we can go into the settings and then we can change that menu bar if it does not match across your menu bar. So all we need to do that is go into the settings, and then we want to click on dark menu bar, and then we'll click return. Now that's a plist configuration file, so all we need to do is log out and log back in, and it'll take into account. All right, and there's our dark menu bar. Look how good that looks when you're using the Sonoma Valley wallpaper. Now that's tip number one. Tip number two is if we want to be able to put OpenCore Patcher into the dock. Now I've shown you this before, but if you want to do that, remember it's the alias that's inside of the application folder. So if we try to grab the alias and drag it to the menu bar, it's not, or the dock, it's not going to work. See that? But it will work if you go on the other side of the recently opened area and let go, and then it can put an alias on this side. But if you want it to go into here, that's okay, you can just open it up, and then it'll go into the recently opened section, and then once it's open, you can drag that guy over here, and now you've got the app in your main dock, and we can close it up. Everything's working okay on this mid-2010 MacBook. And now the only other thing I wanted to show you is if it's running slow, and this is going to help on the older systems, use Activity Monitor to help you. Now remember, this is using only a 2-core Core 2 Duo, so it's going to struggle a little bit on certain areas. You should see this processor load start to go down to very, very minimal, like this right now. When you start doing a task, you'll see the load go up, but in idle, you should see it sitting around anywhere between 3 and 6% down here. Now we're getting lower down here to 7 to 12, now to 3%. That's what we should be sitting on idle. If you're seeing high CPU utilization, then something could be using. And now if you sort it by CPU here, you can see that. And you can also sort by memory. And this will help you understand if you're into some of the swap use. Right now we're on 4 gigs, but we're not into the swap. So we're doing good on memory, just sitting here idle. Once you start opening some stuff up and you start seeing some swap being used, that's when you can start to slow down a little bit. But macOS can still operate fine when there's swap use, and it will get rid of it when it doesn't need it anymore. But when you're seeing 0, we're looking good. Back to the CPU, and you can get this CPU history by double click on the CPU load over here, and you can get this cool historical menu here. This is looking good. Now, when I first got this going, it was a little bit slow, and what I realized is that some of the widgets, the stock ticker was up here using a lot of CPU load, and you can click on the notifications bar up here and notice how I got all rid of all the widgets, and then they're all gone. There was no issues. So you can click edit widgets and you can remove them, and you'll see a little minus button. Remove all the widgets and see how the system acts. I also, to improve some performance on the older systems, sometimes will disable Spotlight indexing. Spotlight indexing is a wonderful feature of macOS, but if you're noticing MDS here in the processes, disable it just to see how it does. So go into Syrian Spotlight, go down to the bottom, then go into Spotlight Privacy. You can drag the hard drive in here from Finder, or if you have it showing on the desktop, drag it in here. Now I got Spotlight indexing disabled on my Sonoma main drive, my High Sierra secondary boot drive, and my macOS Monterey third triple boot hard drive. So the system's not going to be constantly checking these drives to index them for any changes. So it's going to slow the system down. Now, you can remove the Sonoma if you just want this OS to be able to work with that, and that's fine. But that's why I did that. And so far, the system is pretty responsive for macOS Sonoma. If you open up, for example, Safari, you'll see it climb up, but it still is not utilizing the entire system. So once Safari opens, we can just go to Google. Actually, 14.2 will be fine. Let's see how that reacts here with the CPU. So far we're watching the video. It's high CPU utilization, but it's still working okay. Yet once we started getting the video going, we can see that after the video started, most of the processing is sitting down around 30 to 20%. So we are looking pretty good here, even with a YouTube video going on this 2010, almost 14-year-old MacBook. Okay, for our update demo, we're going to be using a late 2013 Mac Pro. We've got it all set. We've got our OpenCore Legacy Patcher updated to 1.3.0. We are on 14.2, and we've got our KDK folder open so we can see. The kernel debug kit has not released a 14.2.1 version, so it can use the current 14.2, and we'll watch that happen here. So we'll open up software update and we'll check for the update here by clicking on general and software update, and then we should see there it is, 14.2.1. Let's click on update now, agree, and there it goes, and you'll see the size here in just a second. Should be 13 point, and there's OpenCore Legacy Patcher checking, and it says here that it's detected that you're installing 14.2.1. The patcher needs to prepare the system, and it may take a few minutes to do so. We're going to click OK. It looks like it's downloading the 23C 5047E version beta KDK. So we're going to let that go, and then we're going to let the download continue here, and the download is 13.36 gigabytes. So we're going to let this finish here, and I'll be right back. It just finished, and we can actually check the log here for that kernel debug kit download, and it's kept in users shared, and it's the latest log, and there's the date, Christmas Eve. Let's double click on it, and there it goes. It says it found the stage update 14.2.1. It's pulling the KDK list, and it said that there's no direct match found for 23C71, which is the 14.2.1 update. So then it says the closest match is the 14.2 version. It says the following KDK is recommended: the 14.2 build and 23C5047E. And we can take a look at that list on the GitHub page. So if you take a look at the Dortania KDK support package GitHub site, we can see the list of available kernel debug kits available. So we have the 14.3 version. We've got the 14.2 public release, and this is actually the RC1 23C63, but it's pulling 23C5047E, and we can see here by the finder, it's pulling beta 3. I'm not totally sure what the deal with that is. We do have C64 in here ready to go, and we even have the folder in here available, but that's what sometimes gets knocked out after an update. So we do have the package. So we're going to have to see which one it's going to use here. We've got the date stamp here, and I'm going to take a screenshot of this, and this does not seem right. It should be using the latest version, but I'm going to let the patcher do what it's going to do, and then we'll investigate after. We got about 7 minutes on the download, and we'll come back later and finish up this Mac Pro. Okay, so I went back to the 2011 to verify what happened, because the 2011 has the AMD GPU. It needs the kernel debug kit, and you can take a look here. We are on 14.2.1, and you can see it did download beta 3's package. But the good news is that it did utilize the 14.2 package here, and you can tell because the modification date was the same that it downloaded here. It downloaded this when we started the update at 9:47 p.m. when I started working on these guys, and then when it finished, it actually installed from the 23C64 package, because look at the modification date, a little bit after at 11:21 p.m. So if it did utilize the beta 3 package, it would have created a new folder in here called this. So even though it downloaded the wrong version, it's okay because it did utilize the 14.2 version, which is the one we wanted. So I'm going to report this in the Discord that it's happening. So hopefully we can get that taken a look at. There might be just a slight situation where it detected that there was this mismatch, and it detected that it should have downloaded this. Glad that everything is looking okay here. Well, I can't show whether the 14.2.1 update installs on my 2013 Mac Pro because it is now dead. Unfortunately, it started having issues a couple months ago where one of the GPUs died, so it was only running off of one GPU. Now, this past week, started having problems with kernel panics, locking up, powering off, not powering up. So unfortunately, December 25th, 2023, we'll have to put the old Mac Pro to the side for parts for now, and I'm going to start looking for another used one on eBay. But that brings us to the Open Collective for OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Money that is raised here help the developers of OpenCore Legacy Patcher support 73 different models. They have hardware failures just like I had here, and they use those hardware models to be able to test the latest build. So if you have the means to be able to help support the patcher, it'd be wonderful to make a small pledge or a continuing pledge to the Open Collective for OpenCore Legacy Patcher. But I also want to make a shout out to all my Patreon members. All of you have helped me be able to get all this hardware that I'm using 6 different models in this video to be able to test OpenCore Legacy Patcher against. And well, I'm going to have to start looking for a used 2013 Mac Pro because that's a perfect machine to be able to test against. And the money that is raised here will be able to help me do that. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate being able to do that, to be able to get these models, to be able to show you the testing on these models. So thank you so much to all my Patreon members for supporting me since we started and throughout 2023. Now comes to the recommendation. Do I recommend installing the 14.2.1 update? I do and I don't. If you do not use the conferencing software or the OBS or streaming that I showed in the example, then you don't even need to bother with it really. But if you do use that, if you use Zoom, you use WebEx, you use OBS or Twitch or anything, 100% install this update. When 14.3 comes out in early spring, because that's the spring release, a big update with all the different changes, it's going to include this change in there. So if you want to just hold on 14.2, you're fine to do that. And there might be another security update in the new year. So that's my recommendation on that. Finally, thank you to you, the viewer, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And I hope you and all your friends and family has a wonderful, wonderful break and holiday. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all your views, your comments, your questions, your emails, your tweets. All the responses that I get is absolutely wonderful, and I truly appreciate you. And we'll catch you in the next video. Thank you.